There's no doubt that everyone wants a loud sounding mix. But what does that even mean? Isn't loudness achieved during the mastering stage? Isn't the mix just about balance and getting the tracks to work together before you finally send it off to that mastering engineer? Well, in today's video, I'm going to describe the mixing tips and the things you can accomplish in the mixing stage to help with the loudness aspect when it finally goes out to mastering. Yes, there's a way to achieve a loud mix, and it's about balancing the frequencies, and it's by how you balance your frequencies and how you make adjustments to automation throughout the mix that can actually make your mix feel louder than other mix or other versions of that mix. So in today's video, I'm going to give you 3 tips to achieving loud mixes, so when that file finally gets to the mastering engineer, it'll be no problem for him to really juice it and make it sound as best as possible. So let's head into the DAW and I'll show you my 3 tips for improving that and getting your mixes to sound loud. Okay, so I'm in my session for my track. And now I'm going to give you the 3 tips to achieving that loud mix. The first one is to control your low end. Your low end is really going to affect how your mix feels loud or quiet, or if you've given the mastering engineer a complete nightmare to figure out. So let's talk about bass instruments real quick, because that's going to tie very heavily in to low end. You can see on this track here, I have a lot of bass instruments. I'm not making this thing easy on myself. So what can I do to help improve that? Let's look at the bass instruments I have. I have a bass guitar. I have a bass synth. And I have another bass synth actually. That's one more of a sub information one, not to mention a kick drum to compete with. Let's bring those in. So we've got kicks, we've got bass guitars. What can we do to reel in this low end? Well, the key for bringing in low end and keeping it in control, one is going to be proper compression. And so by bringing in EQ and compression, because we don't want to let the low mids of our bass instruments get out of control, we are going to then rein in the volume and make sure that that bass instrumentation is really pegged in the mix and not really too variant. So you can see I have actually a limiter on the bus for all my bass instruments here. Take a look. I have the out ceiling set low to make sure nothing is really exceeding that. I also have individual compressors on the bass instruments. So for this bass guitar, I have the CLA-76 compressor. That's doing quite a bit of gain reduction. So I've properly balanced the volume of my bass instrumentation, added compression where necessary. These are virtual instruments, so you can see the waveform is already pretty compressed for these. But then I also tack on the virtual mix rack to make sure I control the EQ levels and the limiter to make sure everything is really kind of pegged into place. You can see how the bass guitar is kind of moving around more in frequency when I have the limiter turned off. Same thing with the kick drums. I really want to carve out and create spaces for the kick drums and not make them too boomy. So you can see here, I've done some cuts on the kick drum and even add some compression to reel it in on that one. There's actually a couple. There's this stomp here. That's got a lot of oomph in this kick drum. So there's a lot there that we need to reel in. With the drag and stomp here, I just add a little thickness and shimmer. Not to mention on the drum bus, there's a cut here around 558 Hertz. That's in the lower mids. That could possibly build up. And there is a CLA-76 compressor on all the drums to keep everything reeled in. So by keeping our low end under control on the individual tracks, we're going to be able to now bring that sub and low information down, keep it from moving. This actually allows you to maximize the volume of your track. And when you bring that limiter in the mastering stage, it's not dealing with these large frequency swings. Everything is kind of stable, reeled in, much easier for you to, automate volume wise and bring up the volume of the track as a whole. The second thing to help you create that loud sounding mix is to automate different sections of the mix. And what do I mean by this? We can automate spiky transients or sections where the volume is incredibly variant on all instruments, because it's not just the low end that we're going to struggle with when creating a loud sounding mix or master. It's also our top end instrumentation, such as vocals. A vocal that's peaking out and all over the place will also cause significant problems and can become piercing in certain aspects. So when I wanted to bring the volume down of vocals and I didn't want them to cut out too much, I used volume automation, clip gain automation here to bring them down. Let's look at the volume automation moves I made on the vocal tracks. So you can see on the bus as a whole, there are some moves here to make sure the vocal doesn't poke out in one particular spot. If it's louder, I brought it down. If it needed to come up, I brought it up. Just small moves here or there to make sure everything is in good shape. With the lead vocal, I did a similar thing. During some parts, it definitely needed to be quieter than others. On this lead vocal, I'm singing the lead line an octave higher. Naturally, that's going to be a lot louder in volume. So I brought that down significantly to keep it from poking out from the rest of the vocals. That's something to keep in mind when tracking vocalists or doing your vocal mixes. Higher octave parts are going to be naturally louder. To also do that, I used a couple different plugins. I used the Silk Vocal Stereo, and what this does is it filters out pokey frequencies in your vocal or in any track. I use this on guitars even a lot of the time. And to keep those pokey frequencies out, it's really going to help your master so that your master engineer doesn't have to use multiband compression or some weird filters to keep those pokey frequencies from hurting your listener. You throw it on the vocal immediately, it'll keep that reined in. Same thing with the limiter. I really use the limiter aggressively to bring and reel in all those vocal tracks. The goal is not to completely eliminate all the dynamics in the vocals. If we go back here, the lead vocal is a bit dynamic. Riding out, I got a fire in my soul. And that's okay. It fits the vibe of the song. But when we get to the end and everything is full volume, we want to make sure everything is balanced perfectly so that nothing is sticking out and everything can be loud and up front. Especially when we have a lot of vocal stacks, things can get out of hand very quickly volume-wise. So using limiters and compression to get rid of pokey instances in high-end instruments or vocals is really going to be critical. And the third tip to that loud sounding mix is using master bus compression. Specifically, I like to use this SSL comp stereo. You can use any compressor really. You can use the Reaper stock compressor, but using master bus processing, specifically master bus compression, is going to allow you to really balance that mix and glue it all together. So it's one powerful package that sounds great in a mix and then sounds even better when mastered. Let's check out how much compression I'm doing during the final part of this song. Notice the master bus compression works as almost an automated volume knob for your entire mix. I really think it's quite incredible. The kick becomes more present, the guitars are reined in a very natural way, and the vocal sits very nicely at the top of the mix. When I took it off, things kind of seemed to fall apart slightly. Volumes were kind of off, the drums weren't always present, and the mix just had a disconnected feel. Everything feels very glued together when I have the compressor applied, even during quiet sections of the song. It's subtle. You don't want to go too overboard with this, but it really is that next step to making your mix sound professional and loud. You don't even have to do as much compression. It was getting close to 3 or 4 on the meter. You could do a little less, but a little goes a long way with this stuff, and it really helps with that, really making that mix sound loud, reining in the transients, and really just creating that powerful sound. So those are my tips for creating a loud mix. If you have any other tips, leave it in a comment down below. I'd like to hear them. If you're having trouble with your productions or mixes in the home studio, go ahead and contact me down below. I'd really like to help you out, and check out all my free guides and material for helping you set up and get started in the home studio. Thank you so much for watching. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.